Hey. What's up, guys? Node Investor here. I was all ready to go, ready to get going, hit the start button, and freaking Google Chrome crashed. Had to start everything all over. I had my charts all set up for you guys. But hey, we're here. We're back to it. Bitcoin's still crashing. Nothing new. Just another day in the crypto world. How is everyone doing on this wonderful day? I hope you're doing fine. Hope you're surviving the summer or the winter, wherever you may be. But let's go take a look at the chart. So what I want to do today is obviously I want to cover Bitcoin. I want to talk all the flashing. We're seeing red here, everywhere. Finally getting some action at least. It was a quiet couple of hours. I was going to say about 12 hours. So you can see this hourly chart just sitting real tight following the leg down yesterday. So we'll definitely get into that. Seeing a lot of crazy oversold levels on so many of these alts. Man, it's really hard for me to just sit on my hands and do nothing. Some of these prices here are starting to get a little attractive, in my opinion, at least for a little bit of a position trade. Maybe not a long-term, maybe not a short-term trade, but maybe some intermediate time frame. So I'm going to take a look at some of those names with you guys just to share some examples, give you guys some ideas of what I'm looking at here. But for now, at the end of the day, we got to wait to see what BTC does, see what's going on here. So let's take a quick recap of where we were. I'm going to hide all this stuff, take volume off, take moving average off. I'm going to keep it clean just to make a point here, right? Technically speaking, when you look at the fundamental technical analysis, philosophy, the first and the most important thing, if you're a trader, is trend and price structure, support, resistance, pivot points, key swing highs and swing lows, that sort of thing, right? And so obviously we're in a downtrend here. There's no real genius to take to be able to figure that out. And so when you look at the rules behind technical analysis, right, you see you have a low and then you have a lower high here, then you have another big swing low, then this lower high here, then we made a new low, then we made a high, and then a lower low, and we did not make a higher high than this prior high, right? Had we done that and gone slightly over, then that would have been, hey, now we're potentially reversing. Now we're looking for a lower high to confirm that, and then a break above this 6,800 mark would have been, okay, that's confirmation. We got an uptrend now. That could still happen, but we're still waiting to see if this is going to be a higher low above this $5,800 support. And so that's the kind of the obvious, very clear big picture trend, right? I mean, until we break above this 6,800, if we make a higher low, I mean, there's no way to say that this is bottomed out. Now, that being said, there are potentials for a reversal bottoming process to be happening here. I talked about that in my last video, and I know a lot of you guys have been seeing the same pattern, and that's this big inverse head and shoulder pattern, right? So you got the left shoulder here, then you got the head, which formed right around that 5,800 mark, and then you've got potentially a right shoulder forming with the neckline being basically that same resistance zone around 6,800. And it's kind of interesting to see that this is a flat inverse head and shoulder. Usually the neckline's kind of slanted this way. Sometimes it's slanted upwards, but this one is just a very straight across flat price point. 6,800 is a very clear resistance level. But I say potential because remember what I just said, right? We're technically in a downtrend. We've not broken this pattern of lower highs and lower lows. And so with that being said, if you're going short, or if you're bearish, or if you're biased to the bearish side, because we're technically still in this lower low, lower high pattern, then this $6,800 mark in and around here would have been an ideal place to start looking for some short opportunities, right? Because you're looking for that trigger to say, okay, we're bouncing into resistance. This is technically a pullback play on a broader trend, right? So you see the downtrend. This would have been an ideal pullback play for a short entry to the downside, with your target basically being around that 5,800 or so. And if we break below that, then you make a new lower low, right? So that's really what we're looking at. But we're a little bit of a key juncture here going into this daily chart, just because this potential inverse head and shoulder pattern is still in play. What would negate that for me? If it starts to get much below 6K, and we very well could see that happen during the course of this live stream with the quick price action we're finally getting to see here, but below 6K, much below that, that's going to really start to negate that pattern. For me, at least, it's going to really be a deep right shoulder. At that point, that's not the pattern I'd be looking for. If it dips below, obviously, 5,800, that completely negates it. But then at that point, you're looking for just a reversal, a different type of reversal setup at that point, nothing to do. So that's what I'm looking at here. Now, looking at some of the technicals, if you go to the RSI, you can see here the RSI in the 4-hour just continues to weaken. It's starting to hit some oversold conditions, but there's not really a strong bullish divergence showing up on that 4-hour yet. We're about 23, 24 on the RSI on the 4-hour. On the 1-hour, there is a slight bullish divergence showing up here, or at least there was earlier, but that was just enough cool off to get another leg down, right? It's a typical kind of bear flag scenario. We saw that form here around the 6,300 area. You can see the RSI cooled off, and then that set up for another break below. The moving average was basically putting pressure here as it started to decline. Let me go to the 4-hour chart there real quick. So typical bear pattern, right? You see the big break, you see the little bit of a relief rally flag into this moving average. The pressure shows up, and then another leg down. And so we're still living below the 10 EMA on that 4-hour chart. So the path of least resistance is clearly to the downside at this point. The momentum is definitely in favor of the bears, and so that's the thing to look at here right now. If you're trading, if you're doing short-term trading, obviously, me personally, I wouldn't be going short at this point just because we're so oversold. Your short entry, I mean, almost textbook was right there. That was the big outside reversal bar to the downside on very big volume. You can see that was this day, the highest volume we had seen in several 4-hour bars. And so close below that, right, that was your short entry. And it turns out that would have been a very nice short entry here. You could have taken it down to about 5%, 6,300, flatten out here, and then another one maybe here on this most recent leg, a little bit higher risk at that point. But that was your classic textbook short entry at that point. So there's a question here. I wonder what's been the historic success rate of the inverse head and shoulder pattern. I don't know if there's been a study done for crypto. If you get the book, The Encyclopedia of Chart Patterns, he's done a lot of back testing, and he gives you the statistics for how profitable and how likely the inverse and the normal head and shoulder work out, both in a bull and a bear market. And I think ballpark, it's about, you typically get about a 30 to 40% increase, but he's talking stocks in that book. And so it's hard to say. Now, let me be very clear. This is not an inverse head and shoulder yet, right? This is a potential pattern. You're always kind of wanting to look ahead. And I'm seeing a neckline here, but this is not an inverse head and shoulder until it actually rolls out, makes a right shoulder, and breaks above the neckline. If this plays out like this, and technically, if you're a pattern trader, you don't do anything until you break out, right? That's your trigger point. That's your buy signal, if you will, if you're a pattern trader doing this type of a setup, right? So technically, there's nothing to do here other than maybe some oversold bounce plays, that sort of thing. If you're preempting it, it's a little bit more of an aggressive entry. You're thinking this is the bottom of the right shoulder. But if this pattern plays out and you get that right shoulder and then you get the breakout above 6,800, it's a high probability pattern at that point. Could you still have a fake out breakout? Absolutely, right? You could have a breakout and then it just rolls over and nothing happens. That's always a possibility, but odds favor at that point, right? There's been precedent set. If you see some sort of breakout like this, you could get the throwback. That could be a secondary entry, and then you get the breakout. Or it just breaks higher, makes a higher low, and then that's your secondary entry. So there's a couple of ways to play that trade once it happens. It's still in the setup process at this point, so there's certainly no confirmation one way or the other. If anything, you're still in a downtrend, right, until this starts to really show that it's going to start reversing. So that's the pattern I was talking about in my last video. It's the inverse head and shoulder pattern. It's a strong reversal pattern when they do actually play out. So if we break above the neckline, it's a very strong pattern. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is also the duration of this pattern. All right, if you look at how long this is played out, so this is currently going on day number 32. And so it's interesting to see that this is a longer term pattern. So it's stronger. Obviously, the bigger the time frame, the stronger the pattern. You know, if you see a inverse head and shoulder pattern going across the weekly chart over several months, that's a incredibly strong pattern. You can see on the weekly chart, it's nothing more than a little bounce off of a break, right? And so that's the other thing I'm keeping in mind. You got to keep in mind that this weekly close here, at what price was that here on the close? That was at basically just above 7K. And so that little level there, once it broke, look at what happened here on this weekly chart. You can see we pulled back, we broke below, we're bouncing right into that level. And so if you're leaning bearish, right, this is basically nothing other than a throwback, and then we're going to make a new low and break below 5,800. So you still got to keep that in mind, right? That's still very much a possibility when you look at the macro picture, that these last 2 weeks was nothing more than a little bit of a relief rally, a bounce after the break, and now we're heading low. We're going to make new lows. If that scenario plays out, I'm still holding to that 5,000 in and around that zone, 4,800, 4,900, whatever you want to call it, as kind of my personal ultimate low. But it's too early to tell, right? We could still make a higher low here and then continue the pattern here. I'm still definitely watching the potential for this inverse head and shoulder play out. We will know in the next, say, 2 days or so, 3 days, right? Because we'll know if it just continues to do one of these, then it's done, right? There's no more inverse head and shoulder pattern. But if over the next day you see some wild action in and around here, then it's still very much in play. So that's what I'm looking for. And that's the pattern to be watching on the BTC side. Go on to the 1 hour charts here. What would do it for me in terms of good confirmation in the short term, right? I'm just talking about short-term trades, potential oversold bounce plays, is a big reversal candle here on some strong volume. We're seeing that maybe, right? We'll kind of see how this finishes out. We got, and you're kind of almost seeing that here, right? So you're getting a big hammer reversal on bottom. This was a beautiful kind of wick I got my alert set there. This is a beautiful wick that undercut all of this little range that it was setting up. And now we're going higher. I think if we close above the 6,200, which now it's really starting to move in, then I think we're good to go. And so I posted that to my private group here just before the stream because I had a feeling we would see this happen. And so I said, guys, I'm not going to be able to do any posting while I'm on the call here. So here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm looking for. And man, it looks like it's really starting to play out. So keep that in mind. This is an outside reversal bullish engulfing candle. There goes the short squeeze. I love it when it happens live. And so this is what I was looking for in the 4 hour. Wow, look at that guy go. 6,200. Oh man, if you're in my group and you're listening, oh boy, did I time that one good. So anyway, it's always nice to see that. Let's see if it can stick though, right? So looking at the daily chart, get this nice wick forming here. This daily chart is about to roll over. And so we've got about 10 minutes left in the current daily bar. If it finishes like this and can hold, that'd be a nice wick. Obviously, if it closes higher and makes a little bit of a hammer bottom on the daily, even stronger. And the way the hammer bottom works, if you're familiar with candlestick patterns, I'm getting very technical here, guys, so I apologize. But what you want to look for on the hammer bottom is you want the candle body. And so this guy here, you want that to be near the upper end of the range, and you want the wick to be at least 2 times the width of the candle body. And right now, that would mean we'd got to get about 6,300 or so to close for that to form a strong hammer reversal, right? But shorter term time frames, this is looking a little bit more positive. It's that outside reversal bullish engulfing candle that I was looking for. And so we'll see if it can hold here. It's definitely some strong buying volume coming in, guys. All right, let's see. Node, you thought this was a historic replay. No, guys, this is live with the Node investor here. Oh, man. So good question, ETF. that's the other thing, right? So I'm looking at this big picture here, and I'm thinking, okay, you got this big bottoming reversal candle happening, or not candle, pattern, excuse me. It would be very interesting if over the course of the next few weeks, right, you actually see this play out. And then the ETF approval that's currently in play is kind of, I think it's 8/10 is the date. So if there's any sort of hint that it's going to have a high probability of getting approved, then you're going to see front running going into that, right? I know a lot of people are saying, hey, I'm waiting for the ETF approval. When that happens, the market's going to take off. And I agree, it probably will take off. But if there's any kind of hint that, hey, this is most likely going to go through, they're going to approve it, you're going to see some front running. You know, I guarantee that you're not going to, the market's not going to just keep dropping until the news hits and then boom, right? It's going to definitely front run a little bit, not a lot. Definitely there will be the big push afterwards. Compare the contrast gold before, after. And so that's a good question. And I did that study a few weeks back. So in the early 2000s, there was, not that one, there was the gold spiders ETF that was launched. And let me show you guys here. So this is going back to 2005, right? And so you can see that's when they launched the ETF. And it actually was announced in the year before that, a few months earlier. I think it was August or something before they actually launched, or March. But you can see what happened after the launch of the ETF, right? The prices of gold had a pretty strong rally, went up 300%, which is a ton for gold. I mean, 300% rally is a massive move. And so you saw that happen. The SLV, which is a silver spiders ETF, also had a similar effect. Not as strong as gold, but you saw this thing happen here. And if you overlay that with the actual gold prices, let's go to 2005. Sorry for the segue here, but it's important because you could see something similar happen to Bitcoin. So you can see here, this was gold. It bottomed out in 2001, and then going into the ETF has already risen, 70%. This was the year that they announced it, and then you had the big run afterwards. And so maybe we see something similar happen in the BTC world. Back to Bitcoin, the most important thing, right? Nobody cares about gold. Let's go back to BTC here. Actually, let's go to some of these other charts because I want to get into some of these crazy oversold alts. My goodness. So looking at the Bitcoin dominance here, we have continued to rise. We're just over 43% now, 43.5%. And so let me take off some of these other names, and these are all the big cap names that CoinMarketCap likes to track. This top 10 list changes quite a bit, so they don't really matter. But what I want to point out is this other category, right? And you can see this is the bottom 80%, if you will, of the crypto markets in terms of names. And you can see it's just been a direct correlation, right? Inverse correlation. As BTC dominance has risen, this has continued to decline. And now the others are right around that 21% mark, as BTC is up here at 43, 44%. And so I'm looking at some of these names, right? I'm talking about like the sub-billion names. And man, some of these names are just starting to look a little interesting here. Let me pull up a random, example that I was sharing with somebody else. And the reason I thought of this was because we were having a conversation and they said, how is the price of salt these days? And I said, I don't know. Let me pull it up. And I pulled it up and I was like, wow, it's $1, right? And you look at these market caps, right? Salt at the peak of the craziness was over $17. And here it is at $1. Like, it's just had this massive pullback. If you go to the market cap perspective, right, you see the big correction, price versus BTC. They're just making new lows, right? New yearly lows, new historic lows on a lot of names. And this is just one example, but there's so many names that look this way. And if you go to the chart and start looking at the divergences on some of these, let me go to SALT, go to the daily. And so you're seeing these kind of same pattern. Like, keep an eye on this, because as we go through some of these charts, you're going to see this right here. You're going to see this double bottom or a new lower low on some of these patterns. And you're going to see this divergence on the RSI. See how the RSI is really starting to climb, even though these patterns are making these lows. On these daily charts, I'm starting to pay attention to some of these because they're making historic lows versus Bitcoin, they've come off of very oversold conditions, and Bitcoin is also trying to form a bottom. And so it could be an interesting combination if you get Bitcoin confirming a bottom with doing an inverse head and shoulder, a lot of these names coming off the lows. And so it could be one of those scenarios where you get the Bitcoin pump first and then the alts. If it weren't for the ETF, I'd be a lot more aggressive about getting alts at this point. But I'm going to still maintain a healthy portion in BTC because of that. Because I think if there's an announcement and they say, hey, there's a Bitcoin ETF approval coming, you could see a rush out of the alts into BTC and get that initial spike and then back into alts. And so that's what I'm going to be looking out for. But some of these alts, just, all things being equal, just purely looking at the charts here, there's just so many names that are hitting these long time lows. You look at charts like Nano, they're just here at the historic lows, making a potential double bottom. You look at charts like Substratum, a lot of these names that were kind of the big flyers early on in the year and late last year, and they're just really down here. What were some of the other names I was watching here? Walton was trying to pump here recently. It was kind of having some action here yesterday. So, but you guys get the point. Everything is cheap. I know. And cheap is relative in crypto because, there's no real valuation for so many of these names, right? It's kind of like, well, what's the fair price of these names? Well, they're just startup projects, and it's really hard to say because 80% of the current valuation is speculative value, and that changes with the sentiment of the market. If things get exciting again, well, the speculative value of the market goes up substantially, so these names will pump. They don't have book value, they don't have cash flows or balance sheets or any kind of fair market value or assets. These are purely startups, and the valuation is based on network effect. It's based on different types of metrics, which is why you have so many of the traditional investors, the Warren Buffetts of the world, who just continually criticize crypto because of that, right? They're used to balance sheets and cash flow statements. And if you're not familiar with their criticism, they've said the same thing about commodities and gold, right? They're like, oh, gold's useless. There's no cash flow. There's nothing you can do with it. You can't eat it. And it's like, okay, that may be true, but doesn't necessarily mean it's useless or worthless. Clearly, it has value. There's a market for it. So it's the same thing with crypto, right? There's just different types of valuations, but we're seeing a big reset in so many of these names. If you look at the second 100 of the list here, just let me just go through the list. And granted, right, we're now stepping into crap coin territory, so you got to take everything here with a grain of salt. But Chainlink, right, down $71 million. Let me see what else. 10x had a little pump there, but still, Dragon Chain 26 cents. Like, holy smokes, wasn't that thing like $4 at one point, $5? You got Civic here at 17 cents. And if you really want to get deeper into the crap coin page, let's flip over another page here, and we'll watch the 200 to 300 list. Selfkey had a big pump a couple of days ago, still pulling in. Let me see what else here. Metal, I know that's been a lot of those token card names have been kind of moving here. At this point, you got to be really selective here. This is really the bottom of the list here, if you will. District's down here. Look at that. District down to 3 cents, man. $20 million market cap. It's basically back to where it started. I remember last year I bought District right around $20 million market cap, and when it gave me a 10x, I got out of the way in December, and here it is right back to the start. So many of these names are just hitting these historic lows. You guys get the gist. I think we're in for a good cycle low and a little bit of an intermediate rally. Am I saying that prices are going to go back to the old highs? No, nobody knows that. Some of them will, some of them will exceed it, and many of them never will. But some of them will. And so these are the times where you start paying attention to those projects that are good, the projects you like, and start looking for these opportunities. Look for those reversal signals that, hey, maybe a low is in. Maybe not the low, but if you're a little bit more active in your investment management, that's what I look for. All right, let's take a couple of questions here, and we'll see what's going on here with the group, with the chats. See if BTC can. So we just rolled over the daily chart here. That's nice right there. I like the fact that this 4-hour candle ended that way. Very nice. So pretty good. Feeling good about that. Let me go over to my other window here. Message some people real quick here. All right, so let me see here. I think over time, transaction fees could be used as a relative reference as a multiplier based on the new future. That's a good point. Didn't think about that, but yeah, transaction fees and would be a good multiplier. You know, and I think as the ecosystem matures and some of that happens, there will certainly be much more ways to gauge, and it's going to depend on the project, right? Because there are different type of cryptos. Some are platforms, some are very specific use cases, some are exchanges like BNB, some of them are pure currency plays, some of them are API plays. There's just so many, right? Some are IoT plays, and so it's just a couple ways to do it here. The daily candle just ended, so we'll see here. We're seeing a little bit of pullback, but that's okay. It's normal. I have this old saying that candles like tails, and they got to pull back and then create a little wick and then go higher, right? So we'll see if we actually get a little bit of follow through. Looking at the prices here, bouncing into resistance, this is important to note that this is the first resistance level, right? 6,300 was a key area that was trying to hold. It broke down. And now that it's bouncing, that's going to be the level to watch on the upside. So it's positive near term, but we really got to get above 6,300 for this thing to really turn the corner. But this is positive. This is a very positive reversal candle here. The fact that volume was, you know, a little bit above average, not mega volume, but definitely above average. And it's because it came right at the tail end of that candle. So it makes sense. Getting above 6,300, it's going to be real positive just because that was the breakdown point. That was support back here. That was resistance back here. And so clearly a significant price point in this structure that's been developing over the last couple of weeks. So certainly a level to be watching. Let's take a look at some of the other charts here. BNB. So looking at BNB, there's a couple of points I want to make here on the Binance chart here. First, the daily chart. So looking at the daily chart on Binance, we had this breakout into new high territory versus BTC and had a good run, was a little bit of port in the storm during the June sell-off. And then since then, it double topped and just been rolling over. And now it's in this little bit of a box that I've highlighted here. It's my personal kind of zone to be looking at, potentially picking some BNB up. So I'm watching this closely as this starts to drift into this zone. Ideally, you want it to hold above this breakout point. And if you go to the USD pair, it's going to show a similar pattern here, but let's take a look at the RSI first. Still has a little bit of room to go on the daily. It's right around 33, 34. And so I'd like to see some sort of reversal here first, but one to keep an eye on as it approaches this zone here. Looking at BNB tether pair, I've also highlighted a specific price point that I'm keeping an eye on here. Let me get rid of the technicals there. And so that's right around this 1150, 1175 zone. You can see this has been an important price multiple times in this structure. This is not a pretty looking chart with this double top. Obviously, it's rolled over since then. So it'll be interesting to see if the BNB USD pair can find some support in and around here. So that's the thing I'm going to be keeping an eye on. This correlates with the BTC pair. If you look at this, I mean, if you go down 3 to 5%, that takes you to the low end of these wicks. If you go to the BNB BTC pair, it's getting confusing with all those letters. That takes you down about 4 to 5% to the breakout point. So definitely lining up there. I want to keep an eye on here looking forward. ICX, man, ICX is getting smacked. So many of these names are getting smacked. But it's definitely hitting some historic levels on the RSI. You can see it's down at the sub 30 mark. A little bit of a, I mean, there's no double bottom here. It was potentially forming a double bottom a couple of days ago. It's continued to break down here. If you go to the 4-hour chart, though, I mean, look at these RSIs are starting to get down here at these lows, 23. You get the 1 hour trying to show a little bit of reversal action here. We'll see if it does follow through. Ontology was another one. Man, Ontology. Oversold on all levels. Go to the daily chart. Look at this RSI on Ontology. What is that, 20? Oh man, it's been a brutal couple of weeks for ontology, and it's right back to this breakout point here, similar to Binance, right? It's kind of in a little bit of a buy zone that I'm watching here, in and around that zone. But man, ontology just, man, this one's ripe even just for a counter trend trade. I mean, if you look at a bounce even to the moving average is a good 15%. Looking at ontology tether pair, go to the 4 hour. Still riding below this moving average here. On the daily chart, I mean, you would have to bounce, almost 20% just to get to the 10 EMA on the daily versus the tether pair. So just some crazy oversold. What was the other one? Oh, quantum. So looking at quantum here, same thing on the daily chart, trying to form a little bit of a double bottom, not a clean one, but it's making a new lower low. RSI is making not a new lower low, so there's some bullish divergence showing up there. But this thing is just, just kind of definitely beat down here. Looking at some potential reversal action on quantum tether. Where's that pair? This potential double bottom forming right here. Would make for a nice counter trend rally, even a rally into the resistance point. That's 20 some percent from current prices. So that's really all there is at this point from my perspective is, these counter trend trades, these potential reversal bottoms. There's very few names that are actually showing some strength and trending higher. You look at basic attention token, that's been a little bit of a stronger name lately. You can see here let me go to the weekly chart first. This big picture symmetrical pattern that's forming on the weekly chart. So something definitely keep an eye on. On the daily chart, looking at the most recent past, right, there's some smaller pattern that's forming, and it's breaking out above this trend line, closing above. And so this still looks good from that perspective. And so that's one of the few names that are trying to show a little bit more strength here. So many of the other charts are just kind of still heading south. Knowles was one that was making higher highs. And so that one's still in play. Series of higher highs. You can see we had a low here, high, higher low, making a high, higher low. Now we're trying to see if we can break resistance, getting above, what's that, 40, let's just call it 44K Satoshi. That's going to be a significant level to break above. And so that's going to be the next big test. But Knowles is one of the few names that's bucking the trend here, if you will, over the last couple of weeks. And so this is the daily chart, keep in mind. And so you can see this is what, going 14 weeks or 14 days, about 35% off the low so far. Still looking pretty good. Looking at NEO. Good NEO, because NEO was one of those strong names that I was watching here. Big move higher, big reversal back down, retrace a large part of that, and trying to hold above this breakout point. That point right there was, in and around $32 or so. You can see the last candle, the day that closed, just as we started the stream, undercut it and closed above. So it'll be interesting to see if that holds, and maybe that'll make a good secondary entry as well as a higher low in the bigger picture. Is this an inverse head and shoulder? Yeah, potentially. You can say that's somewhat of an inverse. It's a little messy just because it has that big wick. But on the closing candle bodies, you can say that that's a key resistance point. So if you hold here, get back above, 39, 40 or so, that'll be a strong pattern there, because that'll be a big break above resistance on NEO. Man, NEO, $30 NEO. That's another example. I'm like, $30 NEO, man. It's tough to not buy them. All right, let's see here. I've been rambling. Let me get a little bit more questions answered. Let me go here. First live stream with the Node Investor. Welcome to the club, my friend. Appreciate you guys being here. Remember to hit that like button. It helps me out. It helps help others to find the channel. Let's go. MFT listed on Bittrex. Yeah, I saw that. Someone posted that earlier, and you saw the little pump happen on Binance as that happened. Apparently, Bittrex still has the news pumps. It still has that sort of power to pump a little bit of news. So yeah, this was the candle there as MFT got listed on Bittrex. You can see the big news reaction and then the typical sell-off. So we'll see if it holds. Let me go. What else here? Alts look to be bouncing as well. Yeah, I agree. So many of these names are just oversold. I mean, even a dead cat bounce, counter trend rally, oversold bounce, however you want to call it, it's probably going to give you a pretty decent percent move off the lows. But you always have to keep in mind, right? If it starts to make a series of higher lows and breaks above resistance, at that point you can say it's a little bit of an intermediate trend, and you can't just say it's a bounce, right? And so that's what I'm looking for. We've had a nice pullback over the last week. Many names are still making higher lows, and so you got to start paying attention to some of those. Not everything. Some of them definitely made new lows, but there's a lot of names that are holding up well. ICX. So we talked about that one here. What do I think about picking some up for the long term? And this is a name that's on my list here for potential long-term entries, just because it's at these levels, right? I'm looking for some signals, some entry signals. And so the type of things you look for are kind of like what we saw back here, right? The bullish engulfing, big reversal candles, getting above the moving average, higher lows, huge volume, right? You don't have to nail the exact bottom. Like, it's not that big of a deal, because if it truly is a low, there's going to be plenty of upside room to go, right? If it's the low, just like we saw back here. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. These type of things are showing up, this kind of washed out extreme reaction, or these engulfing patterns. So I'm looking at that potentially forming here, right? If we undercut and make a higher high and start closing above, let's say 2,400 or so, then that could be the start of another counter trend, right? Does it get back up to these highs and all that? At that point, it's anybody's guess. But even if you hold it, for a couple of weeks and you get 50, 60, 70% out of it, I mean, dang, I'm not going to complain about that. So that's what I'm looking at. So many of these names are definitely doing that. EOS dollar. $7 has been a key price point for EOS. Let me go to Bitfinex because it's got more history here. And so looking at EOS dollar at $7, you can see here, this was a significant price point. Back here, $7, $6.90. Back here, closed above. Right here, big resistance. Right here, major breakout over that price point. And then most recently, we tested it a little bit. Right now, we're right back in and around that zone. And so it's going to be interesting to see if, do we make a big double bottom here on this daily? And we made a new lower low. The RSI has a slight divergence, not a real big one, but if it turns around here, it'd be valid at that point. And then confirmation would be getting above $9. If you close above $9, then that would be a valid double bottom low. And at that point, I expect you would see some more upside continuation, most likely to around 14, 15 bucks. And so that's what I'm looking for here. EOS is looking interesting here. See if we can reverse it off the lows in and around this $7, which has been a key price point. And it needed that pullback. We go to EOS BTC. This was the big run up, and this is where everybody got all excited about it, making new highs. We've had that correction here. Let me see if this aligns to any fib levels. I haven't even checked on EOS yet. Not really. You can see that that's from the big picture. Looking at this, there's not a real big impulse leg on that guy here, so not a clear alignment there. So that's EOS there. Let me see what else you guys got here. Do you also count 5 waves down? I don't. And I know a lot of you guys do like Elliott's, and you guys do the sequential counts on the time-based, and that's cool. I mean, everybody has their own strategies and their own methods, and there really are infinite ways to come up with your own trading strategy. I don't. I'm very much a price action and patterns guy. That's just historically been where I find that I trade best around that. So I lean on patterns a lot. That's my edge. I lean on price action, candlestick patterns, that sort of thing. Obviously, price structure, support, resistance, and then I'll use some other indicators for sure. But generally, that's kind of my methodology. Not to say that the Elliott waves or sequential counts are bad or good or anything. I mean, every system, regardless of the trading system that you're using, is going to have periods where it's just wrong many times in a row, right? It's just the nature of trading, regardless of what system you have. There's no holy grail system out there. And so you find what you're comfortable with and you stick with it and you get better at it. And for me, that's patterns and price action. At the end of the day, it's really all that matters. Let's get through a couple of these here. So I'll tell you what, let me make a list because I'm trying to keep up with the comments. And I'm going to lose some names here if I don't. So let me pop another sheet up over here and let's start looking at some charts you guys want to look at. And feel free to throw in other questions, similar like what you just asked about the wave count and all that. Be happy to answer some of those as we have the stream here. So let's see. We just looked at EOS, so we'll skip that. ZIL, WAN, Monero, yeah, 0x. Definitely want to look at that guy. OMG, Cardano. Let's see here. FBI arrested Node. Oh, man, I hope not. Let's see here. You do not get what Bitcoin is. Digibytes. Ethereum Classic. Yeah, that one was showing some strength. Neo. One thing I've learned to never trust crypto. You know, somebody was posting a joke. It was funny. Neo's going to have to rebrand to Ant shares if this continues. Oh, man. That's true. So we did ICX. We'll skip that. We did ZIL. All right, we haven't done ZIL. I'll do ZIL. We did EOS. I'll skip that. Let me find a few more names here. Okay. Litecoin. I'll just throw in ETH while we're at it. Might as well throw in Bitcoin Cash because I know all of you guys really love Bitcoin Cash. VeChain, Substratum. All right. IVX. Okay. BQX. Siacoin. There's a name from yesteryear. Nulls. We just did Nulls, but we'll take a quick look at it. Man, is it the AI one? All right, so let me see here. Let me see if I have any other names popping up real quick, and we will take a look at a few more. Let me see here. ICX, SYS. I don't care about SYS. I made that mistake last time, but I still don't care. Hey, okay. Anything popping up here? Let's see here. These are all old alerts, so not a whole lot moving here yet. Okay, let's just do that. Let's get through a few more of these names very quickly. Keep the stream moving at a nice pace here. And I'll keep looking at a few more of those names as you guys mentioned them here. So ZIL. We're going to ZIL BNB BTC first here. And this one was one on the radar when it was making this big pump. Nice to see that it's made a higher low so far. This pullback, obviously. So let this be a lesson, guys. At least if you're trading, right? If you're a quick trader, you make quick moves in and out. See this candle right here? ZIL was on a pump, and then it had this big candle. See that big wick that shot higher, and then it closed red on higher volume, right? The biggest volume of the move, right? If you look at the volume, after a strong move higher, the biggest volume came on a big red volume reversal. That is a high volume reversal at the top. It makes more sense at the top or at the bottom. It doesn't make sense in the middle. But after a 50, even just doing candle bodies, 34% move, you get that kind of reversal. That at least tells you that it's going to consolidate a little bit and more likely pull back some, right? And that's exactly what we saw. We saw the big pullback. But the good news is it's made a higher low so far. It's still living below the key moving average on the daily. But looking at the 4-hour chart here, a little bit of an attempt to form a bottom. You're seeing RSI starting to curl higher, the MACD starting to curl higher. And so that's looking good from that perspective. Going to the 30 minutes, and 30-minute doesn't carry as much weight just because it's such a short-term time frame. But look at the volume coming in here as BTC starts to pump. So that's looking pretty good. Tells me that most likely it's made a little bit of an intermediate low. Clearly, you know, this 1017 level, that's what you want to see hold. But ZIL, not too bad. Maybe a good secondary entry following the big move it had a couple weeks ago. WAN chain, big volume reversal coming off the lows here. Here, let me do this real quick because so many of these names are at the bottom of the chart that the volume's getting in the way. Let me pull volume off. And let me hide MACD and let me hide bull momentum just to keep the charts clean. There we go. It's a little easier to read there. And so we'll do that. So nice to see WAN chain. Look at that big engulfing candle on that 1 hour. So very nice outside reversal candle. So what you see is, you see the bottom of this candle, the wick there, you see the body there, you had the price move below and close above. This is bullish engulfing candle. If you're a candlestick trader, that's basically your buy trigger if you're looking for a reversal trade on these type of moves. So WAN chain is definitely looking good from that perspective. Big picture though, let's see. 4 hour chart. See how that looks on the 4 hour. Nice hammer reversal candle on the 4 hour. And still living below the moving average. And you can see this is also a key resistance point. And so if it closes above that, that'll be good confirmation that that was most likely a good intermediate low. And so the price that I'd be looking at would be a close above, oops, not that, a close above, let's call it 32.50, and in around that zone. Getting above that would certainly help to confirm that that was probably a good reversal candle. Otherwise, what you want to see is if you make a second attempt lower, it's got to hold above the low of this candle and then a break above. And so there's two ways to play those reversal candles. When you see the hammer bottom, typically they retest a little bit, but if it holds above the low of the wick, that's a good hammer reversal. So that's what I'd be looking for on those type of charts. Let me see here. What else? Monero. Put a Monero dollar on Bitfinex first. Ugh, that wick. That wick is killing me. It's not to go to Monero dollar on Bitfinex. I guess we could try Bittrex. Let's see here. Enough volume. Not a lot of volume there, but let's see how it looks on the daily chart here first. Monero, maybe trending higher. And so here's the way I look at a trend, right? You have you got the low, you got the high, lower low, another lower low. So this is kind of your swing low here. And then you're making a high attempt and potentially a higher low. You have a little bit of a low here, but this is just two candles. I wouldn't really call that a significant low. And so this is probably the higher low attempt. I'll break above $141, close above that. It's going to be confirmation that you got a higher low in place. And at that point, you can say this is now trending higher and most likely it's turned the corner. The fact that it's broken this broader downtrend is also positive, right? It was just trending below this downtrend. Now it's going sideways. And so that's the first step in the bottoming process. And so far, looking pretty good there. So we'll see here. It needs to get above here, above this moving average on the daily. How does it look on the BTC pair? You see, I got my little double top marked up there already. Monero. Yeah, real similar. I mean, you got the pullback, the higher low potentially forming. You got to really close above this to confirm. So same chart, same thing. All right, let me see, 0x. I guess I should move a little faster here. I was just using that as a little bit of a teaching moment. But let's pick up the pace here a little bit. Looking at 0x, one of the stronger names during this action here. You can see it had that big move higher off the lows and didn't quite retrace all the way back like so many of these names did. And so it held up nicely. Here we are making a higher low potentially. And so if we break above this, what is that, 1540 or so, 1550, that's going to be a significant move higher. At that point, you could probably be looking at a retest of the prior high. So 0x is looking pretty good here. What's 0x look like on the market cap here? I think it's still in the top 100, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Yep, it's ranked number 30, $435 million market cap. And so looking pretty good here. dollar-wise, it's right around that 78, 77 cents. So it's 81 cents. So not too shabby there on 0x. You have 10,008 Eon. Will you make it? Ooh, let's go look at that. Oh, this poor guy making new lows, new yearly lows on this guy, new historic lows on Binance. So you can see that's the low, broke below, broke below, broke below. And, you know, once you see that big break, it's just kind of a stair-stepping mover. But what's positive here is a lot of these names are showing this similar pattern where you got this bullish divergence on the RSI as they attempt double bottoms, but we've not seen any confirmation. You won't get any confirmation until you see these big breaks above or some sort of big reversal candles showing up here. But there are certainly attempts being made at trying to put in some lows off of very oversold conditions on so many of these names. Let's see if that's the low. Time will tell. All right, so we did BNB at the start early, or I guess in the first part of the stream. So I'll skip that one for now. We'll circle back on some of these names that are popular. Let's get through some of these others first. Omisego. OMG is definitely on my radar right now with the double bottom attempt here. Looking at this, you can see the R-side bullish divergence. I'd like to see some volume come in if it starts to reverse higher, but certainly something I'm watching here in the near term. Going to the 4-hour charts, that's looking positive. A lot of these names, now that Bitcoin's kind of done that little bit of a reversal, that's looking positive here. Let's take a quick look at Bitcoin. So as we started the stream, I was talking about I'm looking for a potential reversal and bullish engulfing candles. And we saw this happen in real time just before the close of the day and the 4 hours. So that was good to see. You can see it's paused right at the 10 EMA. So you still want to see a break above 6,300. That's going to really show some momentum continuation. So we'll see if we can get that in the next candle or two. But right now, very short term, that's looking good. We'll see. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep it going. Cardano. We go to Binance. Oh, man, Cardano's look like it's finally turning around. Binance here. Cardano BTC. Yeah. Man, this is another name too. Oh, look at that. It's pumping a little bit there. Cardano, if you look at Cardano here, you know, at the top of the list, just one of those that had a massive retracement. And to be fair, I mean, this guy was way overvalued, right? No one's going to argue with me there on that, right? I mean, 30, what's that, 34 billion, 33 billion market cap. That was just crazy. And so here we are back to 3 billion. And it's kind of a little bit of a historical low point on this, fully retraced the move, retesting the lows that it had here in March and April. So it's looking pretty good from that perspective, kind of more of a longer term perspective. I'm definitely liking a lot of these names, especially the bigger cap platform type of names. So Cardano, Neo, ICX, even on Ethereum. We haven't looked at that guy, but a lot of those names are starting to look attractive here at these valuations from a longer term perspective, right? ETH actually has held up relatively well. It's drifting lower here, broke below this support right now. Let me see how. Let me take that off there. Let me take this off here. No signs of reversal. So I'm actually leaning towards some of these other names first, like Cardano and such. EOS. Yeah. EOS $7 feels attractive. Ethereum Classic moving a little bit here after the big pullback that it had. You know, it was one of the stronger names. And keep in mind, this is a little bit news driven. Coinbase is releasing some ETC names, you know, so that's always a wild card, right? You tend to see the little bit of a run up going into the event and then the sell off afterwards. So something to keep in mind. But yeah, not too bad here. Trying to maybe form that low. It looks like it's actually holding that pretty well. You can see it pulled right back to, what is this, around 1560, 1570 or so. Seems to have found a little bit of a low there. Some good volume coming in. So not too bad. See if we can hold that. Digibyte. Yeah, let's take a look at Digibyte. This was a name that had a nice breakout, and it's offering a little bit of a potential. I won't say potential. It's kind of an odd pattern, right? I would say maybe ascending wedge, but it's not as clean as this one, right? This ascending triangle was textbook. You had the, about 40% move or so that prior run up. And then you had the consolidation phase, right? That was this guy right here. And then within that phase, you had the higher lows starting to form. This made your ascending triangle pattern. And the breakout above this was basically your signal or a close above that. And that's exactly what happened. You saw the close happen. And then you had a little bit of a throwback. And so that was just a classic pattern. You can see what happened afterwards. And then we had kind of the extreme run, the big volume reversal. And since then, we've been consolidating. This feels like it's wedging a little bit, though, to be honest with you. It feels like it's kind of wedging a little bit. So I don't know. What I would prefer to see, because this still has a lot of potential considering the run it had, I would prefer to see another smackdown, but make a higher low and then kind of form one of these type of things. That would make for a much stronger pattern. But right now, it doesn't feel very strong. You can see the RSI is definitely not confirming, looking weak there. Volume on this rise has been declining. So I would be cautious with Digibyte. So now that I've said that, it's going to probably blow out and go up 40% tomorrow. Everything seems textbook when it happened. That's right. But in all fairness, I did post this to my group and I said, hey, ascending triangle on Digibyte, look for a breakout. And that's the thing. If you have a system, and here's the thing with trading, guys, that's a good point. Because when you look at technical analysis and when you watch video courses and it's like, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense now that the pattern's played out. But when it comes to trading, you will never have 100% assurance that something's going to play out the way you think it's going to play out. It's just the way trading goes. You have to make a decision with incomplete information, and you have to have a system and a set of rules that say, okay, when I see this and X, Y, Z happens, then I'm going to do this and that. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to do this and that, right? And that's it, right? But you have a system in place that's been proven to give you a little bit of an edge, and you got to trust it and adjust it occasionally. But that's the way it goes, right? This was a perfect scenario in that sense. But the markets are never going to be very easy. Even professionals that have been doing it for a long time are still in the uncomfortable zone. It never gets easy. Let's just put it that way. It never gets to the point where you're just like, I feel good about this. You always feel a little bit, there's always a psychological battle when you take a trade, right? And then you have bias that kicks in. You take a trade for the long side, and the first thing, I mean, all of us, right? Let's be honest. Like, I'm going to buy this coin. Okay, I've bought it. It should go up instantly. Like, what's going on? Why isn't it going up? I just bought this, and that's just typical, right? Because we have that bias, and we root for our positions. And so you have this cognitive bias that makes it hard to sell when you're wrong, which is why you got to have rules in place, which is why you got to have stop losses, which is why you have to follow some sort of risk management. Never go all in on any one trade because there's a chance you might be wrong. And so it's very difficult to keep the emotions at bay, but having a system and having rules in place will help you with that. But it's just trading. Do you ever feel down with your trading? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's time when you hit a losing streak and you have a drawdown, and everybody hits that. So if you've ever had a drawdown or a losing streak or trade after trade after trade, it's not working, and your account starts to see a drawdown, it gets to you. It doesn't matter who you are, how long you've been trading. Everyone's going to go through periods of drawdown and psychological battle where you're just like, oh man, this sucks. You're kind of down, and what am I doing wrong? And reassessing, and that happens from time to time. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And if you're following your system, and if you're following the rules, but you're still seeing the drawdowns, then there's a lot of, sometimes it's the market, sometimes you're using a strategy that doesn't work in this environment. So there's a lot of different reasons something's shifted. And sometimes it's just the nature of the probability of trading, right? I mean, think about it. If you're flipping a coin, right? You have a 50-50 chance of landing heads or tails when you're flipping a coin. But statistically speaking, over the long run, right, over 1 million flips, it's going to be about a 50-50. But along the way, you're going to have streaks where suddenly you're like, well, I got 10 heads in a row, right? It's the same with the trading system. If you have a trading system that's proven to work and you have probability on your side, you're still going to hit streaks where it's like, this is not working. This sucks, right? And that's true with any system. And there's ways to manage that. If you're in a drawdown, the best thing you could do is lower your position size, right? So if you keep losing after trade after trade after trade, either take a break or really cut back on your position size until you start a winning streak again, kind of regain some confidence, because it's very mental. It's very taxing. All right. So anyway, looking at Litecoin, I'm seeing a potential double bottom formation here with some bullish divergence. And you're seeing, like I said, guys, you're seeing the same pattern over and over. And you're seeing these lows, these lower lows. But the fact that you're seeing the RSI start to move higher on these lower lows, it's signaling that the selling pressure is starting to wane a little bit. The sellers are losing momentum, right? It's the same when you see it on the upside. When you see something really running high, and then it makes a new higher high, but the RSI starts to drift lower, it tells you that the buying momentum is waning. And it's the same thing on the selling side. And so you start paying attention for a potential reversal to start taking place, or at least a kind of flattening out of the chart as the maybe a low is being placed, right? Could it make a new third lower low? It could, right? It could continue to do one of these, and you make a new third lower low, and then you move higher, right? So there's no guarantee that it's only got to be two, but certainly it's looking a lot more positive now than even it was, back here, just because we've had that retest and the momentum's shifting a little bit. So Litecoin's looking pretty good there. Smash those like buttons, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for reminding me. And from the USD pair, it hasn't made a new lower low. It's actually sitting right there, right around that 73.60 mark. And so certainly one to keep an eye on here. 73.60, I was trying to see if it was a significant price point in the past. It really hasn't been. This $100 mark certainly was. And so on the upside, if it decides to stage a counter trend rally here, double bottom reversal, then I'm going to be looking at around 100 to 110 as kind of being the resistance box to definitely pay attention to if we make a break higher. So that's going to be the first big test. Below, right here at this level, certainly a little bit of a double bottom that is potentially forming right now. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep it going. If we don't have a bull market by next month, I'm canceling my CoinAD account. Agreed. Paying all this money for all these tools so they can help me lose money. Let's see here. So we did, let me go through my list. So we did OMG, ADA, we did Digibyte, we did ETC, we did Litecoin. I think we did ETH. We'll skip that. Let's do Bitcoin Cash real quick here. Let me go Bitcoin Cash, Bitfinex. Bitcoin Cash. Similar pattern to some of these, maybe a little bit of a double bottom, not as strong as some of the others in terms of the divergence here, but this one, it's high beta and it follows Bitcoin to some degree. So if Bitcoin goes down 5%, this guy's going down 8% and vice versa. And so you're seeing a similar pattern here. But yeah, not too shabby. I'd like to see this thing break out above this little bit of a resistance zone right now. This guy right there. So about 710. If it can close above that, or even 709, if it can close above that, that'd be a good first sign here. And it's right there. It's pretty close here. So Bitcoin Cash. VeChain. VeChain. We're looking at VeChain from the BTC pair first. Man, still no signs of reversal VeChain. And you can see here just the this is on the 4-hour chart, just constantly drifting lower, making lower highs, lower lows. So maybe here, but there's no sign of reversal yet. First signal will be, can we make a little bit of a double bottom and move higher here? But until then, you gotta wait to see on VeChain. Substratum, I covered it briefly here. my examples on some of these names that are just very oversold and seeing potential reversal here on the 4-hour, but we've seen it here before, so it really needs to follow through and really needs to show some stronger volume here. So the move is big. The volume's not quite showing up yet, so we'll see if that's the move. But going to the daily chart, well, maybe a higher low coming off of this low here, but you can see that was a big resistance point that it broke from, right? So right back here was resistance. Right here broke out above resistance. Right here it tested it, and then right here it broke down, and right here it's testing it, and so that's going to be the big test. Right now it just looks like it wants to go lower, but there is a bullish divergence on the RSI. So it's interesting how that happens over the long term, right? And all of these key price points are being established. Pivx, that's a name I haven't looked at in a while. Let's take a look at Pivx. Still making lower lows here on Pivx. Lower low, lower high, lower low. A little bit of a divergence here. Needs to show some more straight. Man, what is Pivx valued at these days? Pivx. Like a beating here. $1.75. $99 million market cap Pivx. Man, look at that. Boom. Big double top. Back down. But yeah, not a lot of strength yet on Pivx. See if it can form a reversal. Let me go Pivx on Bittrex. That was where you had a little bit more history there. I just want to get a feel for kind of the long term. Yeah, wow. Here, let me clear that line. This is the weekly chart, by the way. And so you're making an attempt at a long time weekly support area. So you can see Pivx on here, Pivx here. We'll be seeing if this turns out to be the support zone. Historically speaking, that is the place where it needs to bounce from. So it'll be interesting to see if it holds this time. All right, so I'm going to do a few more, guys, and then we will wrap it up. Thanks for being here today on this live edition of the Node Investor. BQX. See here, look at that BQX. It's pretty good. Now, how big of a run was that off the low? I'm gonna discount this wick and just say from this move. That's man, that was 50%. Doesn't look like it, but it was just so beaten up. Here it is making a potential higher low. Let's see if it can hold. And I know somebody was asking me about this a while ago, and I was looking at this little bit of a price zone here, just because historically this was the kind of a key resistance area back here. You can see that it was trying to form a low there. Did undercut it a little bit, so we'll be seeing potential higher low here. Be interesting to see if it forms or makes a lower low. Right now, I mean, the momentum is clearly to the downside on the daily chart, right? You can see there's no reprieve yet. It's making an attempt here, but until it gets above, let's call that 24 or 22.5 or so, then I'd be cautious on this guy. So let me see. We did BAT at the beginning. I like BAT. I think BAT's setting up. It's one of the stronger names here. We'll take a quick look at it, but it's definitely one of the stronger names right now in terms of setups. It did break out from this symmetrical pattern that I was watching, and it's still looking pretty good. The volume on the breakout was strong. So all in all, BAT's looking pretty good. You can see the 4-hour still marching up higher. The weekly chart of BAT's real interesting too, because it's a big picture symmetrical pattern. And so we'll see if that one breaks out on the upside. Now you're looking at kind of this zone here as a potential breakout point. Saya Coin, man. Old school name right there. Let's see here. I don't know. It had that big pump a while ago, but it's just, I'm kind of still drifting lower. I am honestly, I'm very leery of this name long term. I mean, there was a good project. It's just they got a lot of competition. It seems like you're making these series of higher lows, lower highs, excuse me, but you are making a potential higher low here. We'll see. It's just not a strong pattern. I mean, when you get these long tails, they do set up for a quick pump, but is it sustainable? It hasn't proven to show, to be that yet, but we'll see. But it's definitely sitting tight here for the last couple of weeks, so not too bad there. Maybe find a level of support. Yeah, I love Sia last year too. It was a good trade. It was a nice run last year, man. Knowles. So we talked about Knowles earlier. Knowles is definitely trending higher here, following the low that it staged at the end of June. And you see it's just making a series of higher lows, breaking above resistance, making a new higher high, higher low. And so that's just, the trend is certainly turned there. You seeing if this is an interesting pattern here, just because it reminds me a little bit of how Binance coin looked when it was breaking out and it had this big pullback kind of cup and handle type pattern. Let me show you what I'm looking at here. So if you look at BNB BTC, it looked a lot like that, didn't it? They had the high and they had the big pullback and a little bit of a higher low pattern. So we'll see if it does something similar. And let me see here. Central Land, Mana. Yeah, I forgot about that one. That was the big pump last time. Nano with the lows. Man, Nano's making some new yearly lows here, but coming off the lows that we had just from about a week and a half ago. And so a lot of these names are making this good retest, right? We had this low. Everyone's like, was that the low? It's kind of hard to say. We won't know. We hit a rally. Now we're making a potential higher low. And like I said at the start of the stream, if a lot of these names start taking out this resistance level and making these highs and pulling back into that, that's going to be real positive, right? If you start seeing that across the board, it's going to start to show that the trend has started to change here a little bit. Is it the end? Is it the low? Not necessarily, right? It could just be another March, April type of scenario where you have a nice multi-week run and then that's it. But those multi-week runs we saw last time, right, produced a few 100% gainers, if not more. So you got to definitely pay attention to those. Let's do a few more, guys, and then we will wrap it up here. So let me go through the list. We did EOS. Let me go through. You guys got a lot more names on those lists here. ARC. We did Digibyte already. Let me keep going. Just kind of scanning the questions here, the comments. Yeah, I did the BNB chart at the beginning, or kind of the beginning. I'm definitely watching it right now. It's approaching my buy zone. Ripple. How did I miss Ripple? Let's take a look at that one. So I'm going to do Ripple BTC first. Ripple testing key support here. Will it hold? Let's see here. So looking at Ripple here versus BTC, you can see it's right back to this. What was this? The April lows here. But I mean, just looking at the big picture, I mean, this does not look very positive versus Bitcoin. So you want to see that reversal happen first. But ideally, it's right back to this point. RSI is hitting these historically low levels, 24, 25 on the daily chart. So this would be an ideal place for Ripple to find some support here. Ripple dollar, was that at 47 cents or something last time I checked? Ripple dollar, 44 cents, let's call it. And let me go to the 4-hour chart here. And so, hey, maybe that was it, right? Find a little bit of support here, showing the same kind of reversal action as BTC on that 4-hour chart. So we'll see if it can show some follow through. It's bumping right into resistance right now here around that 44-cent mark. So, but on the Bitcoin pair, it's right at a key support level. So that's where you want to see it hold. Yeah, Ripple last year was great too. Ripple's a good trade, but I'll be honest with you guys, I don't hold it long term. It's not my cup of tea. But hey, it doesn't mean you can't trade it. Let me see here. We did Zill. Populous. I haven't looked at that one in a while. Ridiculous. Crazy wicks on even Binance. Is it still that low volume that it has that type of price action? Let's see here. Trades about $6 million a day. How much of that is on Binance here? In 24 hours, it's only been about 300K. Jeez. Low volume. Definitely low volume. OKX, that seems to be where Populous has the most fun. But let's see here. Looking at that daily chart. Not too shabby here. I mean, this is a strong little run that it had off of the lows there. What was this? This guy here is about 60% in just 7 days. Can't complain about that. But it's giving up most of that, unfortunately. And so you want to see it get back above this moving average. On the daily chart, on the 4-hour chart, it's struggling. I mean, but it's Binance, lower volume. You've seen those wicks. You got to discount that a little bit when you see lower volume names. Walton's been crazy lately here. I was really liking this setup, looking like it was trying to break out above resistance back here. And right here, right? Look how clean that looks. It's like nice, a little bit of an ascending triangle. It's going to get going, and then it's just like wild action. It's like it was looking so clean and constructive, and then just fake outs, and then the sell-off, and then an attempt to lower high, and then the sell-off. So not sure what to make of that one right now. It's not a real clean setup here. On the daily chart, I mean, it's looking a little bit better, right? You can see in this, but the selling volume has been much higher than the buying volume, which is not ideal at the lows. You want to see the other way around, show some accumulation. So it's not looking as good as it was, say, just a couple of days ago. What's your take on the possible CBOE ETF? So yeah, it's a good point. So I covered that earlier, and I was talking about, it would be real interesting to see if, right now, all things being equal, I'm thinking Bitcoin dominance is starting to reach a little bit of a near-term peak, right around that 43%. But the wild card is the Bitcoin ETF, right? Normally, right now, a lot of these alts are just so oversold versus Bitcoin. They're putting in double bottoms. They're putting in reversal patterns. And so the alts look attractive here. I'm looking for some outperformance. But if there's even a hint of, hey, this ETF is going to get approved going into August, then you're going to see some front running. And you're going to see Bitcoin move higher, so you can easily see that dominance continue to climb and alts continue to drop versus Bitcoin. So I would still heavyweight BTC, but some of these alts, especially some of the stronger projects, right, the bigger cap names, are looking pretty good. So I'd be looking out for that. I know the CBOE, I believe it's August 10th is the approval date. 10th, 12th? You guys remind me. But if that's certainly a day to mark on the calendar here, guys, if it's going to happen. So I'd be watching price action going into that date. And that it's going to be real interesting to see if we see one of these scenarios, right, where you get the inverse head and shoulder play out, and you get a breakout, and then you get a rally right into that date, and then maybe a sell-off or a quick pump after the news. But I'm still holding to the notion that we'll see a Bitcoin ETF approved, and probably we'll see approval happen in 2018. I still think that's possible. That's going to be very bullish for the space, very bullish for Bitcoin long term. But does it happen this month, next month? It's anyone's guess at this point. Stratus. Yeah, that's another one from yesteryear. It's right back to the lows here. I was checking out this chart earlier. You can see it's right back at these historic lows on Stratus. See that line there? It's just kind of retesting and breaking below. But Stratus has a very strong bullish divergence here, much stronger than some of these other names, right? So as it's making this new low, even if it continues lower, it's not going to be enough to pull this RSI all the way down. So got to pay attention to Stratus here. I think Stratus is looking pretty good. Versus BTC, it's setting up. Keep in mind, none of these are buy recommendations or sell recommendations, and I'm not telling you to do anything, but I'm paying attention to some of these names here at these levels. Is the ETF a derivative? Kind of, but not really. Futures are a derivative. Options are a derivative. The ETF kind of is, but it's more of a proxy. Call it a proxy, right? So this is specific ETF is going to be where they actually hold Bitcoin. And so it's similar to like the GLD, right? The GLD, in theory, holds gold. So does SLV. And they buy and sell gold based off of the price and the amount of shares or interest being held. But then you look at options and you look at futures, and those are derivatives. Those are pure derivatives. They settle in cash. They don't actually go out and buy the physical Bitcoin or the physical commodity, right? And so that's that's what you look for here, right? So you get the futures. The ETF, that's why it's more bullish, because if they have to actually go out and hold the amount of Bitcoin that the ETF market cap value is going to be, then that just locks up that much more supply that's going to drive up prices, right? If you look at a supply and demand scenario. So so that's why the Bitcoin ETF is a little bit more exciting than Bitcoin futures. And actually, if you're bullish on Bitcoin, that's better, right, than Bitcoin futures, because Bitcoin futures is a little bit more manipulative, I would say. It's good to short. All right, guys. I think that's going to be it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Appreciate you guys hitting those likes. Appreciate you guys joining me on another edition. So let me see here. Let's go back to, did I cover Loom? I didn't. And I know I didn't get to all the names, guys, but we covered quite a few here. Loom, coming right back to the breakout point here, so maybe one to look at. I know that was a huge pumper the other day. And it's so hard with these newsletter names because they pump and they move quick and then they sell off. But it's right back to this breakout point, so maybe one to look at here. So going back to BTC as we wrap up, I'm going to keep an eye out here in the very near term. Near term, talking like the next day. We had this big outside reversal bar. Volume was above average. I would have liked to see much stronger volume, but the fact that the big move came like in the last half hour of the bar, that's why volume wasn't as strong. Till then, it was just sit tight. You can see it in the 1 hour charts here. Very tight, very tight. But looking at this, very positive, bullish engulfing candle, that long wick that undercut all the stops and then ended up higher. That's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to see. And so that's positive. Now the test is going to be, how do we react going into this $6,300 mark? Is that an area of resistance and we just roll over? And if we back test, which is not unusual to see a back test following kind of a hammer candle, we need to hold below or hold above the low of that candle. So, right around that $6,100 mark. And so as long as it, it could back and fill before it breaks out, that's okay, as long as it holds above that $6,100 mark. On the negative, it's still below the 10 EMA on the 4 hour chart. This is just a bounce from oversold conditions. And the daily chart clearly is still in a little bit of a downtrend, and we have not broken above this. So this broader term downtrend is still very much in play. On the positive, you guys know I was talking about this inverse head and shoulder pattern, and that's what I'm looking for. And we could be seeing the first potential stage of that holding. So as long as this wick holds, we can pull back, move higher, and then we'll get confirmation once we start closing above that $6,400 mark or so. Then obviously confirmation happens when you break above the neckline on the inverse head and shoulder. So something to watch over the next day or so. We'll see how this reaction plays out, see if we can hold that low. But for now, it's looking pretty good, guys. We'll see how it goes. I'll end it with that. All right. Thanks, everyone. Until next time, take care, everybody.